It's approaching 1 p.m. on Tuesday the 21st of July 2020, and we're here at the Samuel D. Champlain statue in Plattsburgh, and there's, my understanding, a new interpretive panel will be unveiled today. Penny Clute, who just got done talking to the news media, is very much part of this, and a beautiful spot here. But long before recent times, a group got together and decided they were going to get an interpretive panel to talk about this statue. It is, believe it or not, come under fire in recent past, and people saying this Native American guide is bowing down in front of Samuel D. Champlain. But everybody knows that the Native Americans were the guides for Champlain as he came here to explore from Europe, from France in particular, and they're very upset with the word discoverer, I guess, but I guess that's all how you interpret it. Obviously, he was not the first to see the lake. The Native Americans were very much aware of its existence. We are moments away from the official presentation here, so we won't keep this lady too long. Penny Clute, how long ago has this been in the works?
You know, we started over 2 years ago, April 2018. It was a group of people who didn't know each other, just kind of spontaneously got together because of we were all attending a program at Plattsburgh State that had to do with Native American issues and also had to do with statues, and they converged here in this monument.
And what was the purpose of you starting this project?
Well, we were bothered by the appearance of this monument, of the gigantic Samuel D. Champlain totally dominating a Native person below his feet, actually. So that just that first impression was difficult. We reacted to calling Champlain a discoverer of this lake when he was the first European here, but not the first person. There were Native peoples here for thousands of years before Europeans came.
Obviously, but you're a world traveler, and I'm sure in some of your trips you said, I've discovered this great place that they do this, they do that. And it's not that you're the discoverer, just that for your own purposes, you discovered it. It's like discovering a great place to eat, you know.
Well, but putting that on a monument goes beyond the personal.
Yeah, I know that, but the word itself isn't that negative when you think about the broad thing. But yes, I've mentioned this before. There's a painting in the Shazy Central School of Champlain discovering the lake, and there's Native Americans with him. And I jokingly said to Bob Ben, this was 25, 30 years ago, isn't it isn't it nice that those Native Americans got to see this lake, because they didn't know it was there.
Oh my gosh, we never noticed.
They were so surprised to see it.
Check 1 2.
Sure.
But
One, two, check 1 2.
Also the headdress is inaccurate for the
like
Native
more
person.
Western.
That's
It's more Western, yeah.
And actually, the designer of the monument realized that, but too late, and there was no money left to change it.
Yeah.
But it is inaccurate.
Yeah,
that was one of the things.
Yeah, so it was put up almost 100 years ago, well, over 100 years ago now.
Yeah, 1912.
Yes, it was put up shortly after the tercentennial, and of course this and the Crown Point statue and others got a lot of recognition. 2009 when we had the quadricentennial.
Definitely.
So I'm sure that got people talking about the word discoverer, but yeah, I think it's interesting that people get upset over certain things. Obviously, it's that one word. So you've got an interpretive panel that is going to explain the true role of Champlain. Is that what this panel is going to be all about?
His role and the Native people's role,
which
is mostly, but that's been overlooked a lot in history. There's the panel's only 250 words, so there's you know, only certain high points that we can hit. But we hope that it educated us doing research and learning about Champlain and about the native peoples, and we wanted to help others learn as well. So we hope this leads to more discussion, more learning.
And a reasonable approach to things like this here, not going out and trying to destroy stuff. A reasonable approach and how to.
Well, we think so. There's something in between leaving it as it is and removing it entirely. If it were taken away, there'd be nothing to talk about, including the native people who were here for so long, including that Champlain depended upon his native guide and the native people. They were allies. He was partners in fur trade with them.
Yeah. And
he wasn't the conqueror.
No, and he did go with them, and they had the feuds with a nation or so down the lake, and they did fight, but it wasn't. He had allies, and he I guess picked up their enemies too. When
yeah, he did.
So it wasn't like everybody living here in America at that point was all getting along with each other either. So it's
for sure.
So people need to know the whole history, and I think.
But that's part of what we want to do. Yes, right. Just like the present is complicated, so is history.
Right.
And so is the past, and so are relationships among different people.
Yeah, you don't tear down stuff like this here. You expand on it, and
exactly.
Give people the whole story. Okay, well, I don't hold you up. You're going to start shortly here.
Yes.
Appreciate you taking time.
Thank you, Phil.
Who's on the committee, Penny?
Greg Huth, over there in the shorts, is. It actually was his idea. He's the one that suggested it, and we gathered together. Ann Bailey, Chaz Azerbada, Roy Hurd, Don Papson is on it. He should be here shortly if he isn't already. So Tim Hartnett was on it. Tim died.
Tim passed away,
and another person moved, Aaron Schwartz moved from Plattsburgh State to Binghamton. So.
Okay, and how was it funded?
All of our work was total volunteer, and we raised money from people mostly through Facebook fundraisers to pay for the monument. I mean, pay for the panel, rather.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, no government funding at all.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Penny.
Calvin, right?
Yes, it is. How you doing, Roy? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Now, I know you've been singing about the Adirondacks for a long time.
A couple of years, yeah.
Have you ever written any songs about the Champlain or anything like that?
Not about Champlain, about the lake, a song called Lady of the Lake, but that's more about Shazy Lake than this lake. But, I mean, it's a beautiful part of the country we live in, eh?
It's beautiful today. It's fantastic. Nice. And you think back to the 200 years ago when the war was taking place out there, and a lot has happened since the 411 years when Champlain first sailed through here as the first European.
Right.
So this was important to you to be part of this?
Yeah, I included myself in. Me and my friend Tim Hartnett, who passed away just recently. But I was kind of the bridge to get the native people involved, because I'm close friends with John Fadden and Kay Olin, who gave us a lot of counseling and direction and literature and experience. So that was kind of my job, getting the Indians involved.
Okay. All right. So you're glad to see it come to fruition?
Absolutely. It's been a couple of years. It's
good. Maybe there is a song in this, Roy. You got to think about it.
We'll work on that.
All right. Thank you.
Good to see you. Sure.
Same here.
Everyone, thank you very much for coming. We're happy that the humidity and the temperature are down from what they've been. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Mohawk people, the keepers of the Eastern Door. We honor the original caretakers of this and surrounding lands, and offer respect to the Haudenosaunee who are still here. We are settlers on their land, and we strive to be accountable by remembering the history and cultivating respect in our relationships with our indigenous neighbors and the land.
This era of COVID-19, we'll be cleaning the mic, every speaker.
Thank you, Penny. Penelope Clute is one of the members of our working group, and one of our hardest working members, has contributed in so many ways, and we are so happy that she's here with us today at our unveiling. My name is Gregory Huth. I'm the organizer of the group originally, and have worked as a coordinator, chairman, whatever you want to call us. And we thank you for all joining us today in this wonderful celebration. One of our longest term supporters from the very beginning has been Mayor Colin Reed, and I would like to introduce him to you. And Colin, if you would like to share some thoughts with us.
Sorry about this.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming out and a new piece of history for the city of Plattsburgh. Obviously, 100 years ago, we had a very different mentality in this country, and I'm grateful that we've moved on and can learn from that. If you think back 100 years ago, or 60 years ago, or 75 years ago, some of the things that we've had to deal with still from our past still trouble us today, and we've got some relics of them so we can remember our errors of the past. I had a friend who went to Auschwitz recently and lamented, why would that place even be left standing? And the reason that place is left standing is so we can always remember forever exactly what occurred in that different era. You know, they have a saying that those who ignore history are bound to repeat it. So this now is an educational moment where we can have a chance to get this right and to explain why we may have been doing some misguided things in the past. But if we simply got rid of this relic, this monument, like some argue we might have gotten rid of Auschwitz, we would have lost whole generations of people who want to try and understand how we could have arrived at today from some of the tragic events in the past. So I really celebrate what you're trying to do in educating us and forever instilling in our memories some of these things so we can correct that and move on in a more unified way. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you, Mayor Reed. I'd like to take you back 50, 60 years. When I was a kid growing up in suburban Cleveland, Ohio, and I was playing with a friend of mine in the back of their yard where his dad was doing some landscaping, and he reached down and he came up with this perfectly crafted work of art. It was an arrowhead carved out of flint, and it was so, each little chip had been done with such loving care. It was obviously the work of a master craftsman, and it struck both of us at that time. We just were left without words as we came to realize that we were not the first people as European descendants to have been on that land. As we would learn in subsequent years, for thousands of years, there were people here, thousands and thousands of years before the Europeans came to settle. There was a similarly jarring experience when I arrived in Plattsburgh almost 7 years ago. It was then that I encountered the monument to this celebrated French explorer, Samuel deChamplain. The bronze statue erected in 1912 portrays Champlain in his famous battle gear, proclaims him navigator, discoverer, and colonizer. At his feet of the monument, a Native American is adorned in almost nothing more than the headdress of a Plains Indian who would have lived not here, but hundreds of miles to the west. The juxtaposition of the European colonizer way up on top and the Native American ally at the base of the monument seemed jarring, just the up and down power relationship between the two. In April 2018, the Champlain Statue Working Group formed, as Peggy pointed out, as an outgrowth of a big READ program at SUNY Plattsburgh, organized by Julia Devine. We were 8 citizens who shared concerns about the monument's iconography. And over these past 2 years, we met with Native American leaders and teachers and Champlain scholars to discover more about this statue and its history. We learned that Champlain was a discoverer only from the European point of view. Native allies, including the Huron, Algonquin, and Montagnais, who had lived in this valley for more than 11,000 years, had guided Champlain from Quebec to the shores of the lake that now bears his name. None of these people wore the Plains Indians headdress that is depicted on a Native American at the monument. These were some of the errors that we were able to correct by offering the educational panel that we present here today and that we will be unveiling. There were other larger mistakes that we were not able to correct. Namely, in 1491, the year before Christopher Columbus landed on the island of Hispaniola, there were 145 million people living in the Western Hemisphere. It's roughly equivalent to the population of the United States in World War II times. By 1691, 200 years later, that native population in both North and South America had been reduced by 90 to 95% by 130 million people. It's breathtaking. What's also breathtaking has been the recovery of the native population in the Western Hemisphere. During these intervening 3 centuries, indigenous people in North and South America have increased their numbers and in many cases preserved their culture despite having been racked by European diseases, slavery, colonization, displacement, and war. It is these inconvenient truths that our Western culture has not come to terms with yet. It's a dialogue that we hope will continue with such modest steps as this educational panel that we dedicate here today. I want to give my personal thanks to the panel members who have served so selflessly over these past 2 years. They include Aaron Schwartz, who has since moved away, Ann Bailey, Don Papson, Chaz Azarkadeh, Penelope Clute, and Roy Hurd. And we are actually dedicating this unveiling today to Tim Hartnett, assistant librarian at SUNY Plattsburgh, who was a very loyal member of this committee and passed away last year. Penny Clute deserves special thanks for doing the research and fundraising and community outreach that has made this panel possible. She has done so much more than her share. We'd also like to thank those Native Americans, Champlain historians, community members with whom we consulted. One of those Native Americans, Maria Christina Pondok, is with us here today. Thanks also again to Mayor Reed and former City Councilor Rochelle Armstrong, who have been our advocates from the very beginning. We got our panel approved through City Council, thanks in part to their guidance. In closing, thank you also to our many donors who have made the panel possible. The Lake Champlain Basin Program for designing and producing the panel so that it would be in keeping with other educational panels in this area, and for the Department of Public Works for installing the panel. Thanks to all of you for coming. We appreciate your support. Our next speaker is going to be, who do we have up next?
I think we do the actual unveiling.
Okay, we're going to do the unveiling.
Ta-da!
Bailey and Mr. Hurd.
So, the panel is now unveiled and ready for viewing by the public. If we could have a round of applause.
So apparently written in French and English, both.
Mayor Reed, would you like to read the panel for us?
Maybe the English side. Native peoples lived here for more than 11,000 years before the Europeans came. Generally, the Mohawk people inhabited the west side of the lake and the Abenaki of the east. Centuries before Champlain, the Mohawk were a founding nation of the Haudenosaunee Iroquois Confederacy, an ongoing democratic union of Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Tuscarora tribes. This monument shows Samuel de Champlain being guided by a native ally. He depended on indigenous people as trading partners and to help him explore inland to the Great Lakes. In July 1609, his Huron, Algonquin, and Montagnais allies guided him from Quebec City along the St. Lawrence and Richelieu rivers to explore this lake and to confront the Mohawk. The indigenous designed birch bark canoe, a light, strong craft crucial to Champlain's expedition, supports the monument. The canoe was filled with beaver pelts and corn. The sculptor mistakenly gave the native guides a headdress worn by peoples from the western plains, not the northeast. Champlain mapped his explorations, and this land became New France under the doctrine of discovery, a European legal principle based on a 1493 papal decree disregarding the sovereignty of indigenous peoples so Christian monarchs could claim ownership of the New World.
Thank you, Mayor Reed. I'd now like to invite up to the microphone Chaz Zarkadeh, who is one of our members, and he is going to recite a meditation prayer from the Baha'i tradition.
O thou kind Lord, thou hast created all humanity from the same star. Thou hast decreed that all shall belong to the same household. In thy holy presence they are all thy servants, and all mankind are sheltered beneath thy tabernacle. All have gathered together at the table of bounty. All are illumined through the light of thy providence. O God, thou art kind to all, thou hast provided for all. Thou dost shelter all, conferest life upon all. Thou hast endowed each and all with talents and faculties, and all are submerged in the ocean of thy mercy. O thou kind Lord, unite all. Let the religions agree and make the nations one, so that they may see each other as one family and the whole earth as one whole. May they all live together in perfect harmony. O God, rise aloft the banner of the oneness of mankind. O God, establish the most great peace. Cement thou, O God, the hearts together. O thou kind Father God, gladden our hearts through the fragrance of thy love. Brighten our eyes through the light of thy guidance. Delight our ears with the melody of thy word, and shelter us all in the stronghold of thy providence. Thou art the mighty, the powerful, thou art the forgiving, and thou art the one who overlooketh the shortcomings of all mankind.
Jazz, for your presentation today and all your support over these years. Finally, I would like to introduce our co-historian of Plattsburgh City, Joshua Beatty.
Thank you very much. Greg, as you were giving your wonderful talk just a couple of moments ago, I saw the words of my talk just sort of drifting like smoke into the air. But the beautiful thing is that you hit on the points that I might, as co-city historian, have wanted to make. I had the same reaction to you as you did to the monument itself, seeing the statue of the well-formed statue of Samuel Champlain atop this high monument, atop what is a very roughly formed, generic Native American figure. And somehow on the words there, navigator, discoverer, colonizer. Somehow we all knew that those words had everything to do with why this monument was problematic. And I think that the working group has done a wonderful job in crafting this panel to identify what precisely is wrong in 2020 with those words that were written over 100 years ago. As co-city historian, someone with a degree in academic history but not practicing in academic history, but I'm also the librarian at the college, a college that focuses on educating the populace of the North Country and educating the world, if possible, to the wonders of the North Country. I think that this working group has done an exemplary job of citizen history, of looking not just at academic history, but at the history of the region, in bringing in Native Americans, bringing in experts in different fields, and in consulting the public. And again, it's an ideal work of citizen history here. It's something I would love to see more of in the city and that I'm happy to support in any way possible. And so I congratulate the group.
Thank you to Roy Hurd, who's another member of the group, very steadfast, and for being, he says, our roadie for today, setting up the sound system and keeping us sanitized on the microphone. Is there anybody who has been gathered here? Yes. Don. Don is going to conclude us for this afternoon. Don Pepsin.
Perhaps best known as one of the founders of the Underground Railroad Museum in El Sable Chasm.
Before I share the closing, I would like to say a couple of personal remarks myself. Most of you know my wife Vivian and myself from the Red Hummingbird Foundation and the Underground Railroad Museum. But most people don't know that the reason we're here is because we have a teacher from South America and we were traveling with him, and Vivian wanted him to know the Haudenosaunee people, so we brought him on this side of the lake after being in Vermont. And he advised us to live near an indigenous community, and we came here. I'm very grateful for having been a part of this committee. I resisted at first, but it's been one of the most rewarding experiences that I've had. I'm 79 years old, and it's the process I want to talk about. The process was one of consensus, and this is the tradition of the Haudenosaunee people: to meet and to meet and to meet until everyone is in agreement. And it wasn't easy, because we had a rumor went out that what we were about was to tear the monument down. And we had met with many people who were very fearful of that. And so I want to compliment or acknowledge this community, because as we are here today, there's a lot of emotional trauma that's being played out about monuments. Some are being removed in the middle of the night, and even some statues of people who did good things. For example, Frederick Douglass, monument of him, was removed in Rochester. So it isn't easy, but it's good to be able to meet with people who you don't initially have agreement with and talk long enough so that you can come to a common ground. And that's what's happened. And the committee members have been sensitive throughout this process to incorporate and to learn and to expand their knowledge. In one meeting, I wanted to mention one meeting, and I suggested that the next step that we could take would be to have a monument for the Haudenosaunee people. There's only so much that we can do with this monument. It's stamped on the historic moment when it was put up, which was during the United States colonial era. So anyway, some of us on the committee would like to continue the process, and there would be Mohawk people involved in that process from the very beginning. So if you're interested in that, please talk with Greg or Penny or anybody on the committee. This monument shows Champlain with a native ally, an Algonquin guide. The Mohawk people and Champlain were not allies, however. In fact, on his journey in 1609, he continued farther south on this lake to confront and kill Mohawk chiefs to assist his indigenous allies. Our 250-word panel is only a beginning. It cannot fully explain the complex history of this place, which includes European colonization and misleading and demeaning portrayals of Native people. We invite others to join us in redefining and discussing our relationships and learning more about who really discovered Lake Champlain.
Thank you, Don, and again for all your work with our working group and all the connections you help us make with Native Americans. He's done an invaluable part. Everybody's done an invaluable part. It's just been a great group of people to work with. I would just like to thank you all for coming out today, and thank you for the warmth of your hearts that brought you here to support our efforts and to help in our own small way build our community. And I'm going to wish you safety, and thank you for adhering for our COVID restrictions, and wishing you a safe trip home and a beautiful, beautiful afternoon. Thank you.
Well, this will wrap up our coverage of this interpretive panel unveiling, and of course the speakers had their interpretations of what really happened here, and the folks who put up the monument were perhaps a little off on the history, but I think they did this with the right idea, with the right thoughts. Obviously putting a Western Plains Indian at the front was a mistake, but I've never looked at this statue and thought this guy was less than Champlain. I always looked at him as the leader of the trip. He was in front of Champlain and showing him where to go, and so it's just a matter of how you interpret things sometimes, but we applaud them for for doing this, and hopefully the statue will remain here for many decades and years into the future. Thanks for watching Hometown Cable.